Hey Ron, I just got back from a convention, the AAAS convention here in Seattle. You can see the Space Needle over my shoulder here. Wow, that was an incredible meeting. Well, there are always these boring lectures about, counting sunspots and that sort of thing, but what really intrigued me was a lecture given by a couple. They're two UCSC grad students from that's the University of California, Santa Cruz. They're doing some research on Mount Hamilton. They're using the big telescope. And they were scheduled many, many months ago. And originally they were scheduled to do something like quasars. They were going to be photographing quasars somewhere out beyond the galaxy. And they were going to count them and try and find out if they're moving and what, energy levels and that sort of thing. The Lacey's, Carolyn and Jack, were really blown away. They had some news that had nothing to do with their original schedule. And I couldn't believe it. I got to tell you, nobody else in the world has really heard this. They haven't publicized it. They haven't written a paper yet, because it was something they came upon just accidentally, how science is sometimes. They were running their telescope late in the night, probably 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. The sun was just barely creeping up. They could just see a little pink off in the eastern horizon. And they were just finishing up the last set of shots. They were looking off into the deep into the galaxy, and the computer comes up and it says, "Geek alert! Astronomer geek alert! Geek alert!" And Jack says, "Oh no, the computer thinks it found something." So they looked into the data and they said, "Oh darn, this is not a quasar. We can tell that. The computer should know that." It was looking through the digital data and it found an anomaly. So Jack said, "Well, let's take a picture and get on with it." And Carolyn said, "Yeah, okay, we'll take a bunch of pictures." So they took a bunch of pictures as fast as they could of this object that had not been recorded before, that, as far as they know. And Jack said, we got to update these files. The database should have already had this. Obviously, it's not a quasar and it's not a comet, or we don't know what it is that is known already. So they took some pictures, closed up the dome, and took their drive back to where they live in Scotts Valley. Scotts Valley's right near Santa Cruz. And anyway, they told us this story that now they've got their name on a comet. This comet really was never discovered before and had some very strange characteristics. For one thing, most comets are sort of white. This one was bluish and very hard to see. So Carolyn told us that she woke up Jack the next day, because Jack is kind of a lazy guy. He sleeps really late and she always has trouble waking him up. She woke him up and she said, "Hey, we've got our name on a comet." And Jack said, Comet, what do you mean we got our name on a comet?" And she said, "Yeah, it turned out those pictures that we sent into the Astronomical Society, that there's something very strange about it. It was not recorded before. It's zooming into the solar system at some incredible rate, and they're still calculating it. So it's called the Lacey Comet, and is named after us. Isn't that cool?" And Jack said, yeah, that's really cool. And he turned over and went back to sleep, according to her. Later on, over the last few months, they've been going back to this comet. They put it out on the web, and people know about its existence. But they have discovered that this comet has even stranger characteristics than just being a little bit bluish. For one thing, it's coming into the solar system in a direction opposite to the other planets. The planets are all going around. If you look from the top of the sun down to the solar system, all the planets seem to be sweeping around in counterclockwise direction. But this thing is coming in the opposite direction. So obviously it's not a part of our solar system. Probably has been way, way out in space, and it's coming into the solar system. And the odd thing is that it's not just flying in some trajectory based on its gravity. The scariest thing that happened that they noticed is the comet has changed its path and has, instead of just flying sort of gravitationally on a trajectory toward the sun, which you might expect a comet to do, this comet has turned and it's going right straight at the Earth. Astronomers have no explanation for how this thing can turn. Well, I mean, some of the guys in the audience were asking them questions and they said, well, are you sure that there was no outgassing from this comet that could conceivably change its direction? And they asked other questions. No, maybe it went through a strong field of gravity between Jupiter and Saturn or something that might have changed its path. But it turns out that the Lacey family checked into this, and there is really no such cause for the change in direction. Carolyn suggested very quietly and demurely that maybe it changed its direction by itself. Maybe it's a spaceship or something alive. And everybody in the audience laughed and laughed and laughed. And a couple of the guys said, well, let's talk about quasars. Did you find any quasars? And Carolyn said, well, you know, we didn't come prepared to talk about quasars. We did find a few, and but there was nothing. There was nothing that we were specifically looking for. We were hoping, for instance, originally to find some quasars that had been ejected by the center of the galaxy, and that would help to support Holt and Arp's theory that the galaxies are creating very dense material and shooting them out in jets, and that those jets aren't just a bunch of gas, but actually possibly the seeds of new galaxies. But we didn't really find anything very interesting. This cosmic swan is the most interesting thing we've seen in our entire career. And Dr. Louise Cusick was our supervisor. At first was very skeptical. She thought that we were kidding with her because this is so far out of the norm. In any case, we've been following it, and we're right now on the edge of being laughed out of the whole astronomy establishment. But it seems to me that we really are onto something that is totally new, that we've never seen in all the years of studying comets and objects in the solar system. This is a brand new object, a new animal, if you want to say so. And we'll bring you some more news as it comes out. And of course, this might get picked up on the networks of the cable stations. But I think keep an eye on this. Ron, I think we ought to pay attention to this. It might be a big story.